I seriously cannot believe how well my last video did. Thank you so much to everyone who liked it, commented, and all these new subscribers. I mean, I'm shocked. I literally had 1 subscriber before I posted that video, so thank you all so much, seriously. I'm working on another video about Little Women right now because I have a lot of extra research that actually didn't fit in that initial video, but while I'm still working on that in the background, I wanted to upload this shorter video about another Greta Gerwig film that I love called Frances Ha. It's actually free to watch on YouTube and linked in the description. Frances Ha is a 2012 indie film starring Greta Gerwig and directed by her husband, Noah Baumbach. The film focuses on Frances, played by Gerwig, who is an aimless 27-year-old living in New York City with her best friend, Sophie. When Sophie decides to move out of their shared apartment to a nicer area that Frances can't afford, her carefree, irresponsible lifestyle becomes threatened as she is forced to confront her immaturity and deep fear of loneliness. The first scene in the film is Frances breaking up with her boyfriend, Dan, because she doesn't want to move in with him. She claims that it'd be unfair to Sophie to break their lease. This comes across primarily as an excuse for her to avoid sharing her true feelings of indifference toward Dan, but also makes clear where her priorities are, with her friendship with Sophie. Baumbach intentionally shows us none of Frances and Dan's relationship aside from this breakup. It is implied that Sophie and Frances's bond might have had a negative effect on the relationship, with Frances even going so far as to interrupt the breakup conversation to take a phone call from Sophie.
Yo, girl, what's up?
But for all we know at this point, this could be an isolated incident. Except that it's not. Later that night, Sophie introduces Frances to a guy named Lev, who's clearly implied to be a potential new romantic interest for Frances, as he texts Sophie later asking for her phone number.
Hey. What? Lev is asking for your number.
Give it to him.
You did just break up with Dan. Today.
Just do it. Ahoy, sexy. Are you around this week? Ahoy, sexy.
That is actually very gay.
Am I nautically sensual?
You're funny.
Lev didn't laugh at any of my jokes.
You were so funny.
Should I text him back? Starboard anal sex?
No.
Tell me the story of us.
Lev is clearly introduced as a romantic figure for Frances, yet instead of texting him back, she and Sophie decide to fantasize together about their future success and lifelong friendship. This becomes a common theme for Frances, choosing not only Sophie over romantic interests, but more broadly prioritizing platonic bonds rather than romantic ones. This is most clear when we compare Frances's strangely casual reaction to breaking up with Dan to her very emotional response to Sophie telling her she wants to move out of their apartment. Sophie insists that she won't move if Frances isn't okay with it, and reassures her that
I'm not leaving you. I'm just moving neighborhoods.
Throughout this conversation, Frances is visibly upset. She tries reasoning that Sophie doesn't even like this friend that she's moving in with, and that she assumed they were going to renew their lease. The stakes are, on paper, way lower than they were when she and Dan were breaking up. I mean, that was the end of a relationship, and this is really more of an inconvenience than anything. Living in different neighborhoods is totally manageable, but given the assumptions Frances had made about renewing the lease, and more importantly, the codependent nature of their friendship, Frances has a very hard time coping with her newfound loneliness. Soon after Sophie moves out, Frances invites Lev to dinner after getting a tax rebate in the mail. The setting is intimate. The only previous interaction between these characters was Lev texting, "Ahoy, sexy," and he even tries to pay for the meal. All of these lead the audience to assume that this is a date. Frances insists on paying since she has the tax rebate, and Lev jokes that he won't sleep with her just because she bought him dinner. Frances earnestly says that she isn't trying to sleep with him, to which Lev clarifies he was joking as he leans in closer, implying that their intentions might be misaligned. Back at Lev's apartment, he tries to touch her shoulder, which she comedically shrugs off. Lev was definitely trying to initiate something romantic, but Frances is just focused on filling the platonic void left by Sophie. So, instead, they hang out in the living room with Lev's roommate Benji. Desperately wanting to fill Sophie's place, Frances decides to move in with the boys, even though she can't afford it and also just met them. She friend-zones Lev not because she thinks he's unattractive. In fact, she tries to convince Sophie to dump her boyfriend for him, but rather because her priority is finding a platonic connection comparable to what she and Sophie once had.
Lev would totally date you.
I have a boyfriend.
But isn't he charming and so handsome? You could be over here all the time. It would be great. And then you wouldn't have to spend all that time with Lisa.
Right. I could fuck him just to not hang out with Lisa.
How could you not want to date him? He's kind of magic.
Because I'm with Patch.
Clearly, Frances is attracted to Lev, but importantly, it also shows her desire to pull Sophie out of her stable romantic relationship in an effort to pull her back to the same level of immaturity that Frances is still living in. Sophie is maturing and leaving Frances behind in the process, as she stubbornly clings onto the past rather than dealing with her inability to be alone. Frances yearns so deeply for human connection to the point of her own detriment. At this point in her life, her peers are growing up, becoming settled in their careers, getting engaged, or even married. Friendship isn't lost, but it is prioritized differently by most people at this point in their lives, and Frances simply isn't ready for that. She still feels like her platonic relationships create her identity, rather than being secure in herself. Unlike most films about women in their late 20s, Frances Ha shrugs off the romantic pressures put on women by society, instead emphasizing the importance of creating your own identity and maintaining those foundational relationships in a healthy manner. At one of her lowest points, Frances delivers a monologue that you've probably seen on just about every single film Instagram page, describing what she wants in a relationship.
It's that thing when you're with someone and you love them and they know it and they love you and you know it, but it's a party and you're both talking to other people and you're laughing and shining and you look across the room and catch each other's eyes, but not because you're possessive or it's precisely sexual, but because that is your person in this life. And it's funny and sad, but only because this life will end, and it's the secret world that exists right there in public, unnoticed, that no one else knows about.
She begins by saying that this is what she wants in a relationship, leading audiences to assume it is a romantic yearning. However, by the end, she corrects herself.
That's what I want out of a relationship. Or just life, I guess. Love.
By the end of the film, we see Frances living out the exact scenario that she described, sharing a loving glance across a crowded room with no need for words. Not with a man, or any romantic partner for that matter, but with Sophie. The pair have reconciled and are at an after-party for a dance show that Frances has choreographed. While Frances speaks with her boss from the dance company, Sophie talks with her boyfriend, and there is an overwhelming sense of peace and comfort between the two as they catch each other's eyes and share that special secret moment right in public without a word. This film is about Frances shifting from the young adult era of platonic codependence into an era of self-reliance and independence. Frances Ha as a film is so special to me because it doesn't treat romance as a substitution for platonic connection. Instead, it tells the story of a young woman shifting out of codependency with a friend and toward independence and security within herself. The film ends with Frances finally living in her own apartment, and for the first time in the entire film, she is happy being alone. She is satisfied with the new dynamic between her and Sophie, and is finally able to find happiness within herself rather than relying on another person to give her life meaning. That isn't to say that she lets go of that deep connection with her best friend, but now she's able to balance a healthy friendship with independence for the first time, marking her first concrete step toward adulthood. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of the video. I know it's more movie focused than my last one, so please let me know if you guys liked it. I'm trying to figure out what direction to take this channel in. And like I said in the beginning, I'm already working on another Little Women video that should be up in the next 2 weeks. And thanks again for all the support. Once again, I will link Frances Ha in the description.